Hi, everyone. I hope this message finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey, and I have an unforgettable story to share with you. On November 28th, 2016, the peaceful hills of East Tennessee were shattered by a wildfire that tore through the Great Smoky Mountains and descended upon the city of Gatlinburg. In mere moments, thousands of homes were reduced to ash and 14 lives were lost. Among them were Constance, Chloe, and Lily Reed, the beloved wife and daughters of Michael Reed, who is my guest today. Michael and his son were not home when the fires attacked their neighborhood. In the wake of the tragedy, Michael became a symbol of resilience, grief, and grace, and his journey through the darkness led him to write The Million Stages of Grief, his raw and powerful book that does not shy away from pain, but instead embraces it as a path towards healing. In The Million Stages of Grief, which has been highly successful on Amazon, Michael offers profound comfort, guidance, and solidarity to those who have lost someone they love, whether 20 years ago or 20 minutes ago. From national headlines to quiet hospital rooms, from blogging in desperation to enrolling in college in honor of his girls, Michael has walked the long road of grief with courage and vulnerability. Now a junior at Grand Canyon University studying behavioral science with a focus on trauma, he's dedicating his life to helping others find light in their own darkness. I'm looking forward to what is going to be an unforgettable and transformative conversation with Michael, who is joining me from Sevierville. Michael, did I say that right? Sevierville, Tennessee? Close enough?
Yeah.
We'll be exploring why he believes the widely accepted 5 stages of grief is a misleading framework, what it meant for him to endure life in what he calls the darkness, and the powerful journey that led him to write The Million Stages of Grief. We'll also talk about the profound role that signs have played in his healing and the extraordinary act of forgiveness he extended to the 2 teenage boys responsible for starting the fires. Michael invited me to select 3 chapters from his book, and by the way, it's a wonderful book and really well written, and I really recommend it, that I felt would resonate deeply with our beloved Grief and Rebirth podcast community. I chose Changes in Values and Beliefs, Professional Support, and Rebuilding, each one offering us new, deep insights and hope. Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life. And just before Michael and I begin what will surely be a conversation that is unforgettable, transformative, and deeply human, here's a fun little nugget for you. Sevierville is the hometown of the legendary Dolly Parton. Hi, Michael. You can see I do my research. A warm, heartfelt welcome to Grief and Rebirth podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Really my pleasure. So now we're going to open with something, you're going to recount what happened to you. So after tragically losing your wife and both of your daughters in those wildfires, you spent many years in what you called the darkness until a doctor gave you a wake-up call. Could you share that experience with us, please?
Every November for 9 years, I absolutely crash. The whole month. I've been through many years of therapy and I've tried to, prepare myself for the date that's coming, and I have failed every year. Ironically, I woke up this morning and realized we're a month away.
I wanna say to you that I think it's completely normal because my accident happened in December, and I got these messages which many of the people who listen to this podcast know about, and every year on the anniversary of that first message, "Saul has to go, many lessons will be learned from his death," I get depressed. And I say to myself, "What is going on? Everything is okay. I don't know." And then I remember, the body remembers. The body does not forget. So I just embrace myself with a lot of self-love and just know that I have to weather it and get through it. Your body is remembering. That's what's going on. So, so you wanna tell us about this darkness and which a little piece of it comes back every November. I know.
2023 was a hard year. They say time heals all wounds, and that's a lie. We don't learn, we never get over our grief. We just learn to live with it. And it was the middle of November in 2023, and I thought I was having a heart attack, and I went to the ER, and I was hooked up to all the machines, and
What were you getting palpitations and all kinds of stuff like that?
oh yeah, yeah, my heart was just beating out of my chest, and I couldn't get it to stop. And so after a few hours of just laying there, the doctor comes back in, and I'll never forget it. He sat next to me on the bed and he held my hand and he said, "Michael, your heart's fine." And something just clicked into my head. My heart's fine, but it's broken. And that was a wake up call. About a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks later, was the anniversary of the fires. So I went to the
Yeah.
memorial, and I always lay roses out, and I always buy them a little gift each and set it at the memorial. And I just sat there and I listened. And then I started talking to him. And I said, "I can't let this date on a calendar kill me every year. I have to make this date mean something different." And I heard Chloe whisper to me, "Daddy, it's time to do the work." I was so scared.
Did you know what she meant by the work?
Yeah. And I write about this in the book. For a really long time, I thought I had to stay in that darkness to keep them with me. And it was that day that I realized to keep them with me, I have to rise out of the darkness. So I sat there and I said, how can I ever help anybody else with their pain if I don't fully understand mine? And instantly in my head, I heard college. We'll talk about signs later, but my youngest daughter, Lily, comes to me as an owl.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I went home and just started searching online colleges. And one thing that I've always believed is there's a purpose for our pain. When I opened up GCU's website
Which GCU?
at Grand Canyon University, when I opened up their website to look, their mission statement is find your purpose.
Oh, wow.
And I said, that's it.
That's it?
So I called and I left my information, and maybe 5 or 6 hours later, I get a phone call back from an advisor at the school, and we start talking, and I share with her that this is the anniversary of the fires, and so we go through the process, and I, you know, I've got to send them transcripts and everything, and I think it was later that night I had to go on to FAFSA, and
What is that? Go on to.
FAFSA, the Federal Administration for Student Financial Aid,
Oh, okay.
just to get my student loans
Right.
and everything. And I'm on their website, and I scroll to the bottom, and there's a little icon on the bottom that says, if you need help, click here. And it was an owl.
Oh my god.
I knew that's where they wanted me to go. I knew that's what they wanted me to do. And I dove headfirst into it. College has kind of become a form of therapy for me.
You're learning so much also because you're specializing in trauma, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so enlightening for you. You're getting so many insights.
Grief is not just losing somebody that we love. Grief can be a divorce. Grief can be a job loss. Grief can be losing a pet. And people argue with me all the time about this. I tell everybody, if the only grief you've ever experienced is losing a pet when you were a child, we're connected. And everybody says, no, your loss is worse than mine. No, it's not. And this is what I'm trying to get the world to understand. Grief is grief, no matter what the circumstances. It's the same tears, it's the same sadness, it's the same heartbreak. Why can't I use my hurt to help you with yours? And that's been my mission.
And even more important, why can't you use the way you've made it through your hurts to where you are now and what you're doing to grow and to do this while honoring your girls? That's such role modeling for people.
And what the book does is it hopefully gives people the power to realize that they too can take the worst moment of their lives to help somebody else through their grief. And then it becomes a domino effect. And that's how you change the world.
Right. In a way, we're both doing the same thing. Because
Yes.
this grew out of the accident with my husband, and what you're doing is growing out of what happened with your daughters and your wife. And we're helping a lot of people.
It's so strange. You'll understand this. But when I get a random message from somebody I don't even know that says, I just read one sentence in your book and my loss was 20 years ago. And finally, after all these years, now it makes sense. There's a weight that's lifted off of me. And I can kind of feel my girls holding me.
And they're proud. And they're so proud.
Those are the moments that I live for now.
And those will collect because I'm a little ahead of you in the process. So I've been doing this, Soul died, more years ago. But as I continue to do this and the podcast is helping so many people, it chores me up. It enhances my reason for living.
Yes.
It gives me purpose. And it just, when you get down to it, it just feels wonderful to know that you're helping people. I wanted to ask you also that when you were writing The Million Stages of Grief, you want to tell us about that process, how you came to that, and some of the insights while writing it that you learned about trauma, including learning to live life knowing that the pain is part of who you now are. And how did this help you as you were writing it? How long into the grief did you start writing the book?
7 years.
7 years into the grief. So, and before that you had a blog, right?
Yeah. So it's probably more 5 years is kind of when I started the blog. And it was complete circumstance. I was in a dark place and there are so many things that I've never published or even in the book, there's a lot of stuff left out of the book of just moments in time over the years where I've been stuck. And I had to write it down because I needed a reference so that a year later I could go back and go, okay, this is how I felt a year ago. This is where I am today. Is there a difference? And 99% of the time, there never was a difference. It was that I was still in the same place. And for 100 years, we've been told there's 5 stages of grief. The original concept came from people that were terminally ill. It's completely different when you lose someone. And there's nothing out there that talks about that. So one day I wrote some things down and I just posted it on my Facebook. And it went stupid. And people wanted to hear more of it. And so I kind of tweaked it over to a blog. And maybe once a month I would post kind of where I was and everything. But 2023, 2024, I knew I was in the right place as far as my schooling and everything, but something was missing. And just like you, I kept getting that. I call it tapping. They tap me on the shoulder, and sometimes those go from taps to pokes, and they kind of hit me a little harder.
Yeah, if you don't get it the first time, they're gonna come back.
They kept poking me and kept poking me, saying, "There's still another piece left." And I knew what it was. I was just too scared to take that step.
Well, it is scary. You're going naked in front of everybody. You're telling them all your stuff. It is scary
And it had to be that way because we don't talk about grief. Why?
because people are afraid of it for themselves, I think.
Yeah. And men, especially,
Yes.
don't talk about grief. And
You're thinking about how men especially, don't talk about grief? Was that a big surprise for you as you were learning about trauma?
I understood from a gender perspective that, men are macho and men hide their feelings. And I couldn't live like that anymore. I had to get this stuff out of my head or I was going to go insane. And with the blog, suddenly I'm getting messages from people. I lost my mom 3 years ago. Can you help me? I don't know who you are, but sure, I'll help you. I was molested as a child and I've never healed from that trauma. Can you help me? Yeah, sure. And it's just blossomed. And I know in my soul that this is the reason I'm still here. And if I can just help one person,
Well, turning pain into purpose is part of your healing, as it was for me. I really understand that. And I'm very curious to ask you about something. How is your son processing this tremendous grief? Has your journey learning about trauma and all, has that also helped him? And because you are open, is he not going the way of most men and bottling it up?
psychologically, children process grief differently than adults.
How
And
old was he when it happened?
15. And even though we lost the same people, we lost different people. He
Mhm.
lost his mom and his sisters. I lost my wife and my daughters. And it's different. He has been able to process everything. He has told me he has accepted. He's gone through all the phases and he's come to acceptance and he knows they're with him every second. And he's okay.
And he's got you.
Yeah. And I would be so mad at him in my head. How can you heal, but I can't? And I learned a lot from him as he processed everything. And he helped me in more ways than he'll ever know.
It's beautiful, Michael, that's beautiful. So I really wanna get into the 3 chapters that you asked me to choose 3 chapters, and, just for personal reasons, honestly, I chose these 3 chapters because they resonated with me and my journey so much. So let's talk about how grief brings changes to values and beliefs, which totally happened to me. Both as a destroyer, it becomes both a destroyer and a creator, and it also offers us growth. Wanna talk about that, Michael?
We always wanted to get tattoos of each other's heartbeats. And every month we'd go to the doctor, we'd put it off, We'll do it next month. We'll get an EKG next month, next month. And then they were gone. And the first time they ever came to me, I was in a bathtub and I had my hands in my lap and I'm just sitting there catatonic. And I felt something shove my hands in the water and I couldn't lift my arms up. And I heard Constance say, remember. And I'm like, remember what? The last time she went to the doctor before the fires, her blood pressure was high. So before they prescribed her medication, they did an EKG. Now I have her heartbeat. And that was the moment when I realized to finally answer your question. God knew this was going to happen. I asked him one day, why didn't you let me save my wife? And he said, son, you did. You held her hand every day until it was time for me to take it. And I screamed, fuck you, at the top of my lungs. And then I asked God again, why didn't you let me save my girls? And he said, your wife's biggest fear was being alone. So now she never has to be. And I screamed, f you again. And I lost all my faith. And you don't have to put that in there if you don't want, with the language and everything. But I never abandoned God. I just chose not to listen to him. And I questioned everything I've been taught in my life. You know, trauma shakes us to the core, and it literally takes your brain out of your head and it just mangles it up, and then it shoves it back in, and you're expected to make sense of it, and you can't. That's why I was so raw in writing the book, because everybody goes through that. Everybody that's grieving has those moments where they don't know where they are. They don't know what they're doing. They don't have a compass. They don't know what they're supposed to do. And nothing makes sense. And eventually, strangely, as you know, one day you wake up and pieces of it start to make some sense. And you're like, okay, I've had these blinders on forever. What if I open them up a little bit more? And then you start to get more pieces of it. And then suddenly here we are talking today.
Right. But you know what, Michael? I have to tell you that I liken grief. This is my interpretation of it. I liken grief where your life is like a bunch of domino tiles, and they're all arranged and they're all perfect. And all of a sudden you get this trauma, and it's like they've all been tossed up in the air, and all the pieces of your life that are represented by the domino tiles are in different places. They're upside down. They're in different locations. They've bounced into other rooms. That's what it feels like. You're
Yeah.
completely discombobulated, right?
For the first 6 months, I swore they were on vacation. Swore it. They're coming home soon. I would look up at the mountains and say, are you home yet?
Wow.
And then I went to where my home was, and it wasn't there.
Talk about heartbreaking.
I've never processed losing our home. I've never processed losing our pets. We had 2 dogs.
Ugh.
I've never processed losing our pictures on the wall and our dishes and our trinkets and memories. I've never been able to process any of that in 9 years. I'm simply stuck at just losing them. I can't. I'll never go past that.
But you say you're getting help with that in school and everything, right? Your school's helping. And then my next question to you is going to be, you've also had professional support. Has all of that helped you? How's it helped you?
I did cognitive behavioral therapy for the first few years, and I remember one day just walking into my therapist's office and saying, why am I here? We talk about the same stuff every week. I cry every week, and I'll leave here a mess. I'm done. And I stopped. I became a guinea pig. I cannot tell you how many medications I've been prescribed for the PTSD and the anxiety and the depression and the nightmares. My God, the nightmares.
And you've also been in support groups too, right?
I tried. It was too early. It was too fresh. So when I ended up in the hospital in 2023, I also ended up scheduling an emergency appointment with my psychiatrist because I had been in the hospital. She said, we've been trying to get you to do this for a couple of years, but will you finally accept EMDR?
Which, by the way, I've also experienced.
I can't tell you the moment that it clicked. I can't pinpoint one specific session where a light bulb went off. All I can say is between 2 years ago and right now, EMDR has completely changed me.
Well, it's desensitization.
Yeah.
Whatever it does, to change the highly tuned sensitivity to what happened, it helps you process it.
What it basically does is it lets you view your trauma like it's a movie so that the emotion is pulled out. Now, I still cry when I tell the story, but it really is different than it was a few years ago. And that has been immensely helpful to me to get to where I am today.
That's so important. I'm so happy for you, and it's so important for people listening to this to know about that form of help that's available. And then that EMDR has led you to rebuilding. Now you're reshaping your landscape and changing connections. So talk about that too. What does that rebuilding look like? And I really want to talk to you about how when you're grieving and rebuilding, it often means that you say goodbye to certain connections that no longer align where you are emotionally. You've changed.
I remember waking up in a hotel and I turned the TV on and I was on CNN.
Mm.
I did not know after the fires how big of a story this was across the country. I had no concept. I became the face of the fires, the face of a tragedy, and I was tired of it. I don't want to be the face of the fires. I want to be the face of hope.
Good for you.
And that's really what started my journey. I isolated myself for a very long time because everywhere I went, people knew who I was and I couldn't handle it. I shoved every friend I had out. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to see it. I would just sit there in the quiet. And that's when the darkness started. And it got comfortable. It felt safe. Looking
So
back, would I have done it differently? I don't know because I wasn't even functioning
right.
for.
Have you for most of that? I understand that. Are you through the college and things you're doing, starting to rebuild new relationships and make new connections for yourself?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Which is what happened to me.
Yeah, once in a while, I'll meet somebody that says, "Hey, I know who you are, and you're an inspiration." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm a broken mess."
Yeah, but you know what you're like? You know what you're like? You know, like in the Japanese, tradition of something breaks and they fill in the breaks with gold and it becomes even more beautiful. In a way, that's what you're doing now, right? As you're rebuilding, you're becoming this wonderful role model for people, and you're gonna be able to help people with trauma and all, and they will trust you because they know you've been there.
That's been the most eye-opening part for me is I'll have people write me that have never told the story about their trauma to anyone, but they somehow trust me enough to tell me.
You make them feel safe, Michael.
That is an overwhelming feeling. And I had a hard time at first juggling that. And I think I've gotten more used to it the more frequently it happens over the years. But
Actually, it's a blessing in a way, it's a lifeline for you.
it's just a reminder that we're all connected.
Look at you're in Tennessee, I'm in New Jersey. We're meeting for the first time today, and we're finding out we have something in common with what we went through. We're all connected. It's all together. So talk to me about we're getting to the spiritual part. How have signs played a significant role? Tell us about all the signs that you've got. And when you finally see your true reflection without the ripples, you realize that you have never been alone in your grief. Could you talk to us a little bit about that, Michael? Tell us some of those signs.
So my wife comes to me as a butterfly. She had a butterfly tattoo on her chest.
It's funny. And I just want to show this to everyone. And Michael couldn't get over. This is my cup.
There we go. Uh, Chloe comes to me as a ladybug.
Oh,
That was her nickname. When we found out we were having a girl, I went to the store and got her first outfit, and it was little ladybug onesie. And I spent like an hour in there looking for the perfect outfit. So this was the outfit. And when she was in labor with Chloe, she looked on the ceiling and there was a ladybug on the ceiling.
Oh,
Since she was
my.
born. So Chloe comes to me as a ladybug and Lily comes to me as an owl. And Lily by far is the strongest sign that I get. She's my sass.
Was she the older one?
She was the
Who was
youngest.
older?
Chloe was 12, Lily was 9. Chloe is the kindest person I've ever known. After the fires, one of her teachers came up to me. I don't even know how I got to the school. It wasn't their regular school because at this point, Gatlinburg was closed. Nobody could get in. So all the kids from the school were sent to another school, and somehow I ended up there to get the girls' stuff from school. I don't even read.
Oh, God. What a heartbreak. What a heartbreak.
Her teacher came up to me and said, a couple months ago, I told the class I was having a bad day. And the next day, Chloe came in and gave me this. And she hands me a ladybug stuffed animal that Chloe picked out of her stash and brought in and gave to her teacher. That's all I have left of Chloe.
Oh, wow.
And it's on my bookshelf in my living
Oh, that's
room.
beautiful.
Lily is my sass. She's my diva. When I tell you that that little girl could put a hand on her hip like that, oh my gosh. And it was probably 5 or 6 years ago now. One day we look outside and there's an owl on the telephone pole just staring at the house. I named her Glory. She has a boyfriend that I named Frank because he's kind of stupid and doesn't know how to land right. And somehow, every spring, these owls have babies and they land in my yard and I get to watch them grow.
There you go.
And I know that's not my daughter, but that's my daughter.
It's your connection to your daughter. And she's with you. She's right there. How beautiful.
And it's constant. It is 24/7. And this is one thing that I hope people really are receptive to. And we've touched on it a little bit already. Those we have lost never leave us. They are always with us. It is us who has to open our eyes wide enough to see them. I promise you they're there. I'll go to the dollar store and the first thing I see when I walk in is an owl. And I'm like, really, Lily? And I hear her giggle. Ladybugs land on me all the time. Butterflies land on my head all the time.
That's wonderful, though. Oh, my God, that's wonderful.
And I welcome it because it's the closest I can get now.
Right. But, Michael, I want to know something else. Have you always known that you're such an empath?
Yes.
That you can, and I mean, from when you were born?
Yeah.
You're a high sensitive person. That's a personality trait. There's like 20% of the population who are high sensitives. I'm a bit of that, and you're definitely a high sensitive empath. What a blessing.
It got stronger after the fires. I was on a cruise and we were somewhere in Mexico, I think. And we were just walking down this long platform and I felt that poking again. And I'm standing there and I'm just looking around and I see this lady. And when I look at her, the poking happens more and more and more. And I'm like, all right, Constance, what do you want me to tell her? And I heard her say, she needs to know it wasn't her fault.
Oh, my goodness.
I have no idea who this woman was. I just said, ma'am, I need to tell you something. And I passed the message to her. And she bawled. And I said, I don't want to know what it means. I just want to make sure you heard the message. I'll never forget that.
That's a blessing.
And it happens all the time.
It's wonderful, Michael. That's wonderful. What a blessing. Really, truly. So, now I really wanna ask, because of course this is so amazing. You actually wrote a letter to those 2 teenage boys that had been accused of starting the fire, and how they live with themselves, that's another story. In it, you offered them forgiveness. How did your son inspire this amazing grace? And could you tell us what you said to those teenagers, just like a little summary of how you were able to give them forgiveness?
It all came one day when I was looking at my son. He was the same age as the two teenage boys were. And I imagined these are kids. They didn't know this was going to happen. They didn't start that fire with the intention of it destroying half of the city. I'm becoming a monster inside. I was so angry,
Understandably.
bitter, and pissed off. And I looked again at my son and I said, I cannot be a monster for him and because of him. And it was, I think, 6 o'clock in the morning. I just got up and I started writing and I poured out my heart. And in the letter, I told them, I said, I know you didn't mean for this to happen. I have to forgive you for me. I have to forgive you so that I don't turn into this monster that I'm becoming.
And forgiveness from all the trauma and everything that you've learned about is more about letting it go out of your body, right? Letting it stop eating you, literally eating you up alive.
It is a constant weight that just bears on you heavier and heavier and heavier. And I knew if I didn't let that go somehow, I wasn't going to be around much longer to raise my son. And I had no intention of that ever going anywhere past my Facebook. And that reached so many people. I don't even think I ever knew
Mhm.
how many people it reached.
I mean, it went viral
Yeah, Franklin Graham posted it on Christmas Eve that year. And then nobody ever heard from me again until now.
till now. And here you're out with the most beautiful book. And like I said, I learned a lot from it. And I think it's written so well. Let's talk about what you've learned about the importance of healing and the purpose for our pain.
There's an old saying that God will not give you too much to handle.
That you can't handle, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the expression is, right? God doesn't give you anything that you can't handle.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah.
Right.
All of a sudden, I'm dyslexic.
You're allowed to be human, Michael.
Um, I don't think anything can prepare you for grief or for trauma or for loss. You know,
Well, in a way, rising out of the darkness through healing has helped you connect even more with your daughters, correct?
absolutely. I wake up every day now and I want to do one thing with my day, and that is to make my girls proud of me somehow every day. And it doesn't have to be anything huge. It can be just giving somebody a hug that needs a hug. And I know they need a hug. Just something little, something simple. I have to do something every day for them.
That's wonderful, Michael.
And that's when I started to realize I have to smile. Because when I think of them, I'm smiling.
Beautiful.
I have to find joy again. Because when I close my eyes and I remember holding them when they were babies, I was the luckiest man in the world in that moment. But I'm still a dad. I'm still their daddy.
That's right.
And 12 years and 9 years is not enough. But every moment of those 12 and 9 years are special. And I have
Yeah,
to carry those moments
that's right.
and hold on to them as tight as I can.
This is bringing up a story of mine, and I don't usually do this on interviews, but we really have a lot in common here. And I remember dating my husband and saying to myself, if I have 5 minutes, 5 years, 10 years, or 100 years with him, whatever I have with him, I'm blessed. And that's exactly what you're saying about your daughters. You had
Absolutely.
them for 12 years and 9 years, and each one of those years was a blessing. So at least you had them. Like, at least I had him. At least you had this love in your life. So many people live without it.
The second I met Constance, she was my neighbor, and I never knew it until one night she just knocked on my door. She needed to borrow the phone. The second I opened the door, I knew she was the one. I didn't even know her name. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, there she is. And I didn't say anything because I didn't, it's kind of creepy. Hi, you can come in, and will you marry me?
Right.
But we found out later she went home that same night and knew it too.
Oh, wow.
And every moment that I shared with her
Was a blessing.
will live in me forever.
It was a gift. It's a blessing. I feel the same. Michael, I feel the same way. The same way. I'm so fortunate that way that I had this man in my life. And that's how I feel, And I want to ask you also, so you are able to experience joy now, in addition to the grief, that you kind of have them both going on, which is what I tell people all the time. One does not exclude the other.
Yes, very much so. You can grieve, or you can be in grieving and still live. Spaces like this where people can be vulnerable and open and can hear other people's stories and can resonate with their stories. What you do is so important. I wish I had you in my life years ago. Keep doing what you're doing because you've changed my life today.
As we wrap up this unbelievably moving conversation, I'd like to leave our listeners with 2 profound reflections from your wisdom-rich book, The Million Stages of Grief. Grief often arrives like a force that dismantles what we hold dear, scattering our beliefs and leaving us uncertain of where to stand. Yet as we slowly gather the fragments and begin to rebuild, we may discover a new worldview, one that, while different, resonates more deeply with our lived experience. In that reshaping, we often find a purpose that feels more authentic, more compassionate than before. And here's another one of your quotes that really touched me. Though we would never have chosen the loss that sparked this transformation, we can choose to honor its lessons, carrying forward a more honest and heartfelt understanding of what it means to live and to love in an ever-changing world. Michael, I want to thank you from my heart for this illuminating dialogue on grief and for reminding us that no matter where we are on our grief journey, we are never truly alone. Many, many blessings to you.
To you as well. Thank you so much.
Or as I like to say, to be continued. Thanks for tuning in to Grief and Rebirth. Remember, you can dive deeper into everything we've discussed by checking out the show notes and all past episodes at ireneweinberg.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and wherever you love to hang out online. Plus, we're on YouTube, so be sure to subscribe and never miss a video. For those of you listening, you'll find links to my 2 books, Good to the Last Drop and They Serve Bagels in Heaven, in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see those books listed right above, so don't miss out. And here comes a special treat. If you sign up for Audible as a first-time user using my link, which you can find in the show notes, you can get They Serve Bagels in Heaven for free. And finally, people often ask me what I read, what I use, and what I recommend for healing and self-care. So I've carefully curated a compilation of those items to share with you. You can head over to kit.co/grief and rebirth to check them out. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, many blessings.